Board. Hello, everybody. Great to have you joining us from all around the country and the world. We maybe even have some Canadians joining us. My name is Eric Hatch with Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching. I'm going to give you some perspective of the businesses that I get to represent because it'll help to paint the framework for today and where we're going. I serve as CEO and owner of both Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching, located in Fargo, North Dakota. Hatch Realty is a top 50 real estate team in the country. We also just own our own brokerage, so we run everything through that. It has been a joyous and crazy run to get here. In the last 10 years, we've sold over 4,000 houses now and have learned a thing or two along the way. It's been really fun, and I have such a passion and a joy to share hopeful great ideas and insight as to how people can best be a business owner and how they can function to lead people exceedingly well. Leadership is in fact my biggest passion, so much so, shameless plug here, but so much so that I even wrote a book. Look at that. What a dreamboat that guy is. Wrote a book on leadership as well because I care that much about it. And today we're going to be talking about how to go from being a realtor to a business owner. And it doesn't mean that you abandon your real estate license, and instead it means, this bubbly is quite carbonated. It doesn't mean that we abandon being somebody who's in real estate. And in fact, you're probably still going to be in production because rarely do people make it to, as Gary Keller says, the 6th or 7th level when you're just working in your business, you're just working on your business instead of in your business. So I want to help you take that step. If you're right here, if you're just the solopreneur, brand new, getting started out and have no leverage, or if you're way over here and you have a ton of leverage, either way, I think we're going to give you some nuggets and some things that will make this valuable for you. Now, as I had mentioned previously, I want this to be a conversation and not just a presentation. So in the chat bar, please ask a ton of questions. I promise I'll get to everything I possibly can. And then at the end, we'll have some nice question and answers. There's no sales pitch here. There's nothing that we're trying to hook you with. I will just share with you that we do have some great things at the Hatch Coaching Marketplace, and I'll point to that at the end and even give you a discount code. But we're not like pushing any products here. We just want to provide opportunity for people to grow. And with that, I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to jump to the old, where is it? Oh, dang it. You better give me a second. Look at me. I'm just fumbling and bumbling. We're going to click back on that in just one second. There it is. That's what I was looking for. Welcome everybody to my slideshow presentation. Let me start at the top. Okay, there we go. Again, we are talking about transitioning from being a realtor to a business owner, and I want to show you what I think matters the most. You need to have your priorities in order, and I actually talk about this pyramid in great detail in my book too. It is just leadership 101. If you don't have your priorities in order, everything will come falling down and falling apart. I remember having lunch with a local real estate agent, and he's a good buddy of mine, and he told me, Eric, this is the year that I'm finally going to put my clients first. And he's a guy that was leading a team of about 10 people, and I wanted to say, dude, no, that's a terrible idea. Your clients shouldn't come first. Who needs to come first as the highest of priorities are God and family. Those are the things, and I would put yourself on that base pyramid. And please take some notes. I want this to be valuable, and we'll send out this slideshow afterwards too, but I think it's important to take notes to get your feelings and responses as you go. So at the base of your pyramid, you have God and family and self. Those things, no matter where you go and what you do as a real estate professional, those need to stay at the center of your time schedules. Your time blocking and your protecting of those matter the most. But the reason why my local real estate friend was messing up was not because he was saying I'm not going to put myself and my God and my family first. He was saying that I'm going to put my clients ahead of my team. I think that's a recipe for disaster. The moment that you have somebody in your world, somebody who you have in your care, they need to be of the highest of priorities, not your clients. See, if you're great to your team member, then you both can be really good to your clients. But if you're only great to your clients, you won't be good to your team members. Then as you go up that pyramid and invest your time a little bit differently, you'll see at the top that community is a part of it. And when done exceedingly well, God and family and self and team and clients and community, they all kind of merge together because you're caring for your community with your clients and with your team. Amidst all this COVID chaos, I asked my team about 3 weeks ago, like, who has a heart to do some real good right now? And who's feeling like you want to get active and involved? And this was all about serving my team. But we talked about how to serve our community by serving our team. And so we pulled together a group of people and we formed these cool fundraisers online. And between our, we have 4 different markets, and between 3 of our 4 markets, we've raised over $15,000 right now. And we're doing that because, and Heather on the call right now, Heather is our team member and expansion leader in Bismarck, North Dakota. She is running her own campaign, but using the team's energy and sourcing so that she can reach out to our community as well. See, it's all hyper connected. And I'll share with you this, that you have this opportunity to invest in your team at a great length by using this pyramid. But even more so, it is irresponsible if you are not teaching your team about this pyramid. See, I've seen a lot of real estate models, and again, some of you are solopreneurs and some of you are running teams and some of you are members on teams and everywhere in between. One of the things that I've seen is I've seen far too many people try to build followers instead of leaders. And you try to build people that are reliant on you instead of you investing in them and being reliant on them. Now, yes, it's good when a team member is reliant on you. It's good when Heather in Bismarck is reliant on us. But the greatest success is if Heather can stand on her own. That means she's going to be a flight risk. I understand that because I live in that every single day, is that when you have real talent, they are consistently flight risks. And what that means is that forces us to change our environment and our ecosystem so that somebody who's real talent like Heather continues to stay around. And when you have an ecosystem like that, it brings in a higher level of talent than you can ever understand. So my job is to teach Heather how to be a business owner, not to be a realtor who's reliant on nothing but company leads and doesn't know how to fish if we had to put her out there. Instead, we want her to be strong and vivacious. And then as she grows her capacity, I'm forced to grow my capacity. See, our job as business leaders is to share the wealth and to multiply our efforts, not to just hang on to it ourselves. And so sharing this pyramid with your team, massively important. Again, if you have questions or comments, please fire them in the chat bar and I will jump to that. But I'm going back to sharing my screen because I got more goodness coming your way. Moving on here, gang. Being a business owner means that you need to know that your people are your greatest assets. Again, your people are your greatest assets. When I started my team. I made my first admin hire in 2011. I hired a part-time college kid who used to be in my youth group. I did youth ministry before I got into real estate full-time. And I hired a part-time college student to build my business. And really, I just had her pick up and tie a couple of loose ends, and that was about it. I can't say, and Christopher, yes, you'll get a copy after this. Great question. You'll get a copy of this recording, no doubt. So I hired a gal named Mariah, and I can't say that I used her exceedingly well because I just had her build a couple side projects. And the mistake I made is I didn't have her leverage me. I should be the highest dollar per hour person in my world. I should be the one that leverage is built around first. I should be the one that has the right mindset to protect my cash. And so what I first did, and what I did right, is I sought after coaching. This isn't an endorsement of Hatch Coaching, although if you wanted to use it, that's pretty dang cool. Instead, just having coaching as a part of your world is so unbelievably important. The reason why it is so unbelievably important is because if you don't have somebody guiding you down a new path, you're going to stumble and make totally irrational and irresponsible mistakes. I've just done that far too many times. The next thing I want to point out is to build that leverage around you. I was alluding to that before, but there's 5 key hires. And people will say to me, Eric, if you were to do this all over again, what would you do differently? And I go back to the very beginning, and some of you may be at the very beginning, and even if you're on a team, this still applies to you. The first thing I would do is I would build leverage around me. I would hire an assistant. And this, it's dangerous to hire a part-time assistant, because if they're good, you'll need them to be full-time, or if your business grows, you'll need them to be full-time. And if they've taken a part-time job, it's probably because they want a part-time job, and you may have to make a rehire. And so I would instead bet on you, bet on your success, and hire an assistant to do a lot of that busy work around you. Transaction coordinating, inputting listings, doing runner duties, even some personal care things like picking up dry cleaning and bringing your cat to the vet and everything else. If you're on a team and you're an agent on a team, that's already being done for you. You're one step ahead because a lot of that has been leveraged for you. Now, the second hire I'd make, first one is an admin. The second hire I'd make is not a buyer agent. A lot of people think I'm going to hire an agent and bring them on board, and that agent is going to make me money. Let's say your average commission is $10,000 and you're on a 50-50 split with that agent. You're saying, I bet this agent can take my $10,000 and turn it into $5,000 for me all day. And you usually fail to train them well, you fail to equip them well, and your $10,000 doesn't turn into 5, it turns into 0, more times than not. It is financially irresponsible to hire a buyer agent. It's a big statement. Instead, the second hire is actually another admin. The first admin helps to leverage things off your plate, and the second admin now helps you to build. This is building in your CRM. This is building client care things. This is mastering systems. This is now maybe having you start investing and purchasing some leads, and they're organizing your life and helping you to build. But you're the most valuable resource, and that's what you need to protect. And that's how you need to say, how can I keep myself in production at the highest level? Now, there's a rule. I want you to write it down. It's called the rule of 3s and 10s. 3s and 10s. If you Google the rule of 3s and 10s, you'll find awesome articles on it. With the rule of 3s and 10s, it talks about how you will find yourself when you go from 1 to 3 people, how everything needs to change. And then when you go from 3 to 10, it's a reinvention of how you run business. And 10 to 30, 30 to 100, 100 to 300, 300 to 1,000, and so on. Now, those aren't hard numbers. It may be 9 people or 11 people, but realistically, when you're hitting these new numbers, you need to reinvent yourself. And so when you're making this third hire, you now have 3 people on your team already. And you're having to transition, and we'll get to this even further in a moment, but you're going to have to transition into more leadership. You're going to have to transition into being a giver to people and tending to your team, and less to your clients. Your team should be and could be caring for your clients, but you shouldn't as much as you had been. When you find yourself on this third hire is one of my favorites because it is a showing partner. It is a leveraged and salaried team member who is licensed. They're helping you grow your capacity on the buy side in a really large way. Let me say this, is if you're thinking about growing as I'm recommending and hiring a showing partner, let's say you're going to pay that person $2,500 a month as a salary. Number one is you're allowing somebody who is not very refined or has no experience in real estate come into real estate, and you're giving them a consistent paycheck right away. Amidst COVID, how many talented people do you think are out there right now waiting to find that next job opportunity, and they've now just been released into the ecosystem because of job layoffs? Like, there's high level talent who can't jump into a full commission job because they don't have a sugar mama or a trust fund, you know? And maybe they don't have those things afforded to them. Maybe they don't have a great savings account, or they've been irresponsible with money, but that doesn't mean that they won't be great team members. Some of my best agents, and in fact, almost every agent I have in my ecosystem now started off on salary at Hatch Realty. I have two different guys who started off on salary. Last month, one of them sold 24 houses. This month, one of them has already sold 19 houses with 3 days to go. These guys started on salary and they couldn't have jumped in otherwise. They came from education and ministry. So you can open that up and find better talent. And then think of that $10,000 commission. Do you think that a showing partner can help you sell one more house a month? Yes or yes? Because the answer is yes, of course, a showing partner can help me sell at least one more house a month. That means that $10,000 commission is coming to you and you're only having to pay $2,500 for their salary. That means you're net positive. Even if they would have converted that one extra deal, you're still net positive another $2,500. And when somebody is an employee rather than an independent contractor, you have a lot more freedom and flexibility. So admin, showing partner. Fourth hire and I'm not going to go too super deep into this, but fourth person is an ISA. This is now taking leads, an inside sales agent taking leads and converting them for you and your showing partner. The fifth hire is another showing partner because that first showing partner, they should be ready to go as a buyer agent. And now this showing partner is coming in to leverage you. You're spending more time in listings and leadership and less time working with buyers, but you're consistently building a bench. Oh, that's good stuff right there, gang. We're going to keep going. When you do hire, see number 2 there in the middle, when you do hire, do not hire out of desperation and don't hire too quickly. Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching has adopted a 9-step hiring process. It's painful. It takes a month or 2 to go through. And yet when you can see the talent that exists in our world, we only have A players that are around. And if you hire incorrectly and hire the wrong person, the rest of the stuff I'm going to share with you now doesn't matter because you're going to be banging your head against a wall because you've hired the wrong person. And that's not their fault. That's your fault. Number 3, train on excellence. Don't just train to standard. Standard is that baseline that you have in your ecosystem. Standard is that number that you don't have anything fall under. Standard is both lead and lag measures. A lead measure would be like the number of calls you're going to make in a day, and the lag measure would be the goal that you have for the year. You need to hold to standard, everyone, but you need to train for people to perform up here because there's always a little bit of receding that happens. And if you train somebody to here, chances are they may perform about here. But if you train somebody to here, they may perform about here. And this isn't acceptable. So you have to understand how much time are you putting into leadership and investing in your people. It is far more than you probably have been doing, and yet it plays the infinite game. Simon Sinek wrote a book recently called The Infinite Game, and it talks about the difference between playing that short-term win and that long-term gain. And if you play the infinite game, which is what I'm playing with Heather out in Bismarck, she's not making near as much as she has the capacity for, even if she was on her own and doing this by herself. But what we're playing is we're building an entire empire, and we're building Hatch Realty 2.0 in Bismarck, where she's going to take over and massively dominate. And we're continuing to play the infinite game of we're taking less now. I'm investing more time, and she's investing less income that she's making, knowing that there's something greater coming. And you have to know what your infinite game is. You have to have such a clear vision of who you're going to be and what your company needs to be in order to actually make sound and sage decisions. Finally, I'm on fire right now. This feels good. Finally, number 4 is how you treat your family members matters more than anything else. How you treat people matters, and you should not treat people as expendable, but instead you should treat them as valuable. But if you are taking notes, I want you to write down team versus family. This is a really important one because if you're thinking about how we run our world, are you running it as a team or are you running it as a family? And when I was at 3 people and 10 people, we're I think 38 right now for Hatch Realty. But when we were at 3 and 10 people and even at 25 people, we called ourselves a family. And that was all well and good. But families have a hard time holding each other accountable. Like siblings have a hard time holding each other accountable. Sometimes we have the tail wag the dog a little bit. A team has a unified goal and a unified mission. We love each other like family where, you know, the difference between a hug and a chokehold is just arm placement. Like, we love each other as a family and we'll give grace and we'll give support. But as a team, don't we say that there's different rules when you function as a team? You have a captain, you have a coach, you have assignments, and there are consequences for not meeting those. Those are harder to do when you have a family. I still think you can love like a family loves, but my recommendation would be to operate as a team and not as a family, because you have clearly defined rules and strategies and procedures with that. Moving on. Being a business owner means having standards. I talked about that earlier for just a brief moment. If you're to have standards, you first have to have standards for your meetings. One-on-ones, large group gatherings, you need to have standards. And by the way, it is a CEO's job to run kick-butt meetings. If you don't love meetings, you probably shouldn't be a CEO. If you don't love one-on-ones and digging in deep with people and talking about personal stuff, if you don't love that, you're not going to thrive well as a business owner. Being a business owner and a CEO is not a reward for you being a great producer. It is a shifting of responsibility into a different kind of care. Understand that it is not a reward. And some of the biggest mistakes I've made has been rewarding top salespeople or top admin into leadership positions because they've earned it, but they didn't earn the trust and they didn't have the heart to do it. They just thought that this is where I'm supposed to be. And frankly, some producers need to stay as producers because that's where they're happiest. Number two, having standards on production. I alluded to that before, of lead measures and lag measures, and you need to have those standards, but you need to train to excellence above that. You also need to have standards on your schedules, that the most important things show up the earliest part of your day. Your lead gen and your lead follow-up and your role playing should be the first things on your schedules every day. And if God forsaken something happens and you have to remove that from your schedule because you have something that has to happen, don't remove it, replace it, and take that really important stuff and put that in another part of the day, either today or tomorrow or the next. But don't abandon that, because you have to be regimented and operate as though you're a business owner, and that is the most important thing you do every day. See, most realtors ride this big old roller coaster of big ups and big downs, and they go big up when they've done their lead generation and their lead follow-up, and they hit up here, and then they abandon those things, and then it comes plummeting down. And if you're in production, when things get really busy, you're probably going to be less of a leader, less of an engaged person. And guess what? Your culture will go down. Your team members' engagement will go down. And finally, number four, it is stolen from the title of my book, is to play for the person next to you. Look, there it is again. I said there'd be no shameless promotions, and I can't help it. I look beautiful and tough here. Boy, I am rolling my eyes at myself. Nonetheless, to have standards of what it means to play for the person next to you means that you have to have priorities as a business owner for everyone else. Zig Ziglar says that you can have everything in life you want if you help enough others get what they want. When you play for the person next to you, it means that you are dedicated to service and you are having a standard of service that you will never dip under. I know that life happens and sometimes we move up and we move down. And so that's why our standard of excellence has to be up here for how we serve one another, knowing that that may recede, but it always has to be above that standard. If you fail on leadership too consistently with your people, they will no longer afford you grace and they're going to be gone, regardless of the opportunities that you can provide for them, regardless of the at-bats that you can give them. You can have A-level talent stay around you if you are an A-level leader. It is the only way. Okay, keep the questions, keep the conversation coming. Lisa, you're my favorite person for all your fine warmness that you're throwing my way. Thank you for that. Let's continue on. Being a business owner, we're getting into numbers here, gang. Being a business owner means you're going to pay yourself in 3 buckets: a salary, commission, and owner profit. Please write this down, because almost nobody is doing this right now. You should be paying yourself a salary. I don't care if you're a producer with nobody in your world or if you are the CEO or anywhere in between, you should be paying yourself a salary. That salary is your livable wage, maybe It's reflecting the hours that you have as a CEO of working on the business instead of in the business. If you didn't think a salary was important, look at all the PPP money that's gone out lately. And those that have been paying themselves salary had a much easier web to work their way out of. And so pay yourself a salary. Oh, full transparency is when I was full-time at Hatch Realty, I'm not. I probably spend 15 hours a week with Hatch Realty now. I'm spending a lot of time coaching and building some other businesses. I'm fully engaged as a CEO, but my job is to be a coach, an advisor, and a visionary. And so my salary, what used to be $150,000 a year, has now dropped substantially because I'm not spending as much time in that. If you're on the opposite end of that spectrum and you're paying yourself, let's say, $40,000 a year, that's your consistent business. And that means you have to have your pockets built up where you can pay even though you don't have transactions coming in. I don't think you need to pay yourself that $150,000 salary unless you have a really big business, but I do think that you need to start paying yourself a salary. The second bucket you need to pay yourself in is commission. The same split that other agents in your world are getting. Let's say you're on a 40-60 split. That means that every time you sell a house, and that's that $10,000 commission, that's not $10,000 to the company. That's $4,000 to Joe, the real estate agent, and $6,000 to the company. Being a business owner means you need to know your numbers. And if all your production commission goes into your team or your own individual bucket, you have no idea if you're actually profitable. You need to pay yourself the same split as you're planning on paying other agents or that you are paying other agents. That is a separate checking account. That's a separate thing altogether. So you're paying yourself a salary in a separate account. You're paying yourself a commission in a separate account. It doesn't cost to set up a bank account. It will cost you if you don't do this. The third and final is owner profit. And I think that after you pay all those other buckets of paying yourself a salary, paying all your expenses, paying commission and everything else, that you should be profiting owner profit of at least 20%. If you don't have owner profit of at least 20%, I don't think you should greenlight more growth for your team. It is a red light, green light action. And that's the difference between being a realtor who's just trying to figure this out and being a business owner who is operating with knowing their numbers and knowing them with great intention. Let's say you sell 30 houses a year, and those 30 houses a year are $10,000 in commission. That means that's $300,000 in GCI that you're bringing in. That's a lot of money. $300,000 in GCI, you now have to take a look and you have to say, okay, what's my salary in this? Well, I'm going to pay myself $40,000 a year to run my business. So now that you're down to $260,000 in GCI. And then you say, well, I'm going to pay a 40% commission. I'm going to pay a 40% commission to myself as a producing agent. 40% of $300,000 is $120,000. So now we have $40,000 in a salary. We have $120,000 in a commission paid, and that means that you're now at $140,000 left in quote unquote profit. This quote unquote profit is now being attacked by your commission splits that you maybe have with your brokerage, your expenses that you have, and now you're looking to say, well, where's my profit at? Because I bought some of these leads and I had to pay these other splits and everything else. Where does my profit go down to? And if you're not at least $60,000 in profit after you pay all those other places, I don't think you're ready for new growth yet. Because you shouldn't be taking on another salary and you shouldn't be paying splits to somebody else until you can get your numbers right. So many people mess this up. Don't be one of those that messes it up. Chris, making a message. I would love to connect with you after this. Happy to do so. And Lisa, would you pay yourself a salary and commission from your sales? Yeah, it's both. You would pay yourself a salary and commission from your sales to get those numbers exactly right. Boy, oh boy. I can tell that this is an itch that doesn't get scratched very often because we just talk about commission and we don't talk about profit and we don't talk about all these other buckets of functioning as a business owner. So this is really important stuff. Moving on. By the way, I teach this to my team. I want all the agents on my team to run this exact same way. But we're going to talk about knowing your numbers. This is stolen. These three categories are stolen from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. If you haven't read that, it is one of the Bibles of building a real estate team and building a real estate business. So it is worth its weight in gold. I probably read it 4 or 5 times now. There are 3 categories that you need to know your numbers on. The first is COGS, cost of goods sold. MREA says 20% for listings and 40% for buyers. In my world, to keep A-level talent, that number doesn't play. I couldn't pay my listing agents and I couldn't pay my buyer agents 20 or 40% without having higher turnover. And so I choose to say our company cost of goods sold is at 45%. We're at 36% on the listing side and 50% on the buy side. We do more buys than listings, so it averages out to be about 45%. So I know that every time I'm looking at my budget, 45% is my cost of goods sold. This B subpoint, this is a really important one for you to note, is that the number of cost of goods sold changes constantly, yet the percentage will stay the same. See, if we sell 10 houses a month or if we sell 30 houses a month, I know that it's always 45%. But that number of the actual dollar amount changes dramatically when we take a look at cost of goods sold. If I do 10 deals a month or 30 deals a month, that number changes. Now, the second category, though, are expenses. MREA says your expenses should be about 30%. That's a tough number. I think your expenses also include salaries. And so in our world, we want expenses to be between 35 and 40%. The bigger you get as a team, the harder it is to meet your numbers as profit, because to run my business is over $150,000 a month in expenses. And then you have cost of goods sold as well. So if we don't make at least $300,000 in commission each month, I don't make a dime. I lose money. In fact, as I record this, my first 3 months in real estate for the year, I'm $125,000 in the hole. Now, understand, I live in North Dakota, and we're really seasonal on things, and you're going to see some big changes and ebbs and flows to your business when you get locked in on these. I know that I'll make back almost all my money just in May's production. So it's not bleak by any means. I'm still paying myself a salary. I'm paying myself commission on deals I touch. So I'm just talking about your actual profit and that number you need to know. Sorry about the digression there. Let's stay on expenses. Expenses, that number stays the same. If your expenses are $10,000 a month, that number shouldn't float, because you know what your salaries are. You know what you need to do for X, Y, and Z. You've purchased your lead sources. You have your office rent and everything else. If it's $10,000 a month, that number stays the same. The percentage of its impact changes based on your production. And that is where all of your wealth opportunity lies, is in managing your expenses. If you've locked in your cost of goods sold, that number is not going to change. That percentage stays the same. If you can manage your expenses and then sell above that, that's where your wealth is. Let me show you an example. As remember, I said I have to get $300,000 to lock in a $0 balance sheet for me. Between my cost of goods sold and my expenses, 300 grand is about that number. Now, if we sell and make $400,000 in GCI, I know exactly what my profit is going to be. Everything over my break-even number is 55 cents on the dollar for profit. So you remember, cost of goods sold is 45%. 45 cents of every dollar goes to cost of goods sold. That means that every dollar I make above my break-even, I'm going to make 55 cents on that dollar. My expenses stay the same. And if I can hit my break-even number and then produce above that, that's where all my wealth is. That's where I make all my wins. And right now, I have over $500,000 in GCI on the books for May. Our team is doing really well amidst this COVID stuff. And that $500,000, I know that I'm going to make 55 cents on the dollar. Now, the only caveat that I can give you is understanding that amidst all of this pay periods, if you're paying every 2 weeks like we do, and you have people on salary, you will have 2 times a year that you have 3 pay periods in a month. Now, there's 52 weeks in the year, so you divide that by 2, and that's 26. There's 26 pay periods, and yet that means 2 months of the year will have 3 pay periods in it. And for us, May is one of those times, so I then have to add that expense to it as well. I know I'm going fast. I know I'm talking a lot of numbers. It's why we're recording this. It's why we want to bring as much value to you. But if this is going really fast for you, I can tell you I've been in your seat. When I was just starting out and trying to figure this out, I just sold a ton of houses and I hoped that I had a business, and I didn't. I didn't have a business until I actually understood these numbers and were able to digest them quickly and efficiently. So moving on, we're going to get there, folks. Just a couple more slides and we will send you on your way. Moving on, here we go. Was that too far? That's not too far. Okay. You need to know where to get business from. That is such a huge thing. Where are you going to get business from? And what strategy do you have for each of those? PCSOI, Past Client Sphere of Influence, is the main place to have a strategy around. This will be reflective in your time blocking, in your energy, in your spends, and everything else. Is you shouldn't just buy shiny objects. You shouldn't just chase after things that look like it's the new thing. You need to invest your best into number one, into PCSOI. They say over 80% of people say they'll work with their same realtor again, and yet it's less than 20% that actually do. That's a painful number, gang. And so if you don't have a strategy for your PC and SOI, here's the good news is that Hatch Coaching has at least created some of those resources for you. Go to hatchcoaching.com, look at our marketplace, and we have some great things that'll help you stay in front of those people. I'm going to jump to number 3 next. We're going to circle back to number 2, but the next most valuable strategy is a long-term nurture. This is a forced registration lead, a pay-per-click, or somebody comes to your website. And by the way, if you don't have a great website, we have some people to point you to. But having these forced registration leads and these long-term nurtures matter a lot. It's why I put an ISA as number 4 for the hiring process, is because having a system and a strategy to tend to long-term nurtures matters a lot. I get almost my highest return on investment coming from long-term nurtures, deals that we're nurturing on average for 605 days before they turn into closed business for us. So imagine today here, it's the end of April, you're not going to close a deal for a forced registration lead for almost 2 years. Whoa. Now, if you have a strategy for that and you're playing the infinite game, those become unbelievable returns on investment. See, most people are playing this short-term game of how do I grab things today? That's number 2. That's that low-hanging fruit of Zillow and Realtor and Trulia and radio leads. Now, we as a company invest in those, but we invest in those to feed us today. You can't play those high expensive lead sources and not have a long-term strategy, because if you're only reliant on number 2, you are going to go bankrupt. You won't be around because they're going to move the target on you. They're going to make it so much more expensive for you to do this game. And that is an unfair thing for you. If you're only reliant on Zillow and Realtor and company leads and whatever may come your way, you're not going to make it. They were saying for the last number of years that technology is going to force out about 1/3 of the realtors in the business. 1/3, going from 2 million realtors down to maybe 1.3. That has sped up exponentially because of COVID. And I think that we're going to see that 2 million drop to probably 1.5 million in the next 12 months. They were saying it was going to take 3 to 5 years. We're going to see this change in the next 12 months. Because you have to have strategies around long-term nurtures, and you have to have strategy around PCSOI, and you shan't not only rely on that low-hanging fruit. I bet you weren't expecting to hear somebody say shan't not, but I did. How about that? All right, gang, we're wrapping up. These are some final notes. Please start throwing some questions into the chat box. I want to answer everything I possibly can here, but I had some final notes that didn't fit in everything else I talked about that I couldn't have you miss on. The first is, if you haven't yet formed an LLC to run your business, I think you need to. I think you need to jump on that and jump on that now. It costs a few $100 to do, and it has tax implications that protect you. It has you set up for future success. If you're making anything over about $50,000 a year in commission, boy, set yourself up and get the tax advantages of running as an LLC. Now, it can be an LLC or an S Corp, and note that I'm actually filing my taxes as an S Corp for all my LLCs. I have 25 different ones. Tax day is very expensive just to pay for my taxes, but it is the right move to do. The second, I alluded to it previous, is you need to set up at least 2 bank accounts. One for your GCI and one for your commissions, and one for personal production. In fact, I think that's 3. There we go. Should be at least 3. If you haven't read the book Profit First, it's a game changer. To get ahead on this matters a lot. And the takeaways: read Simon Sinek's Infinite Game, read Profit First, read Play for the Person Next to You. How about that? Moving on. We're going to lead with revenue as well. If you don't have the money for it, if you haven't earned that right to buy it, you can't buy it. You will not buy your way to the top of success. You can only grind your way, and it feels like it's slow and arduous. So when you look back, you'll say, boy, I built a much sturdier foundation because I didn't just chase after that next thing. Number 4, don't practice on your clients. My gosh, that's so important. We do role playing 4 times a week with Hatch Realty. It might be 3 now as we're moving into busy season, but please do not practice on your clients. It is irresponsible of you to do anything but practice with one another. And you think about a football season, right? A football season is 16 games in a year. Each game lasts 3 hours. That is 48 hours of actual game time. And yet they're playing all the time in terms of practicing. It's a really big deal. So please practice, 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 practice. I'll get to the questions here as I finish these last points. But stay in front of it, get ahead of it, and practice often. We even have some great tools in the Hatch Coaching Marketplace that are some role-playing games, and we'll give you a discount code here at the end of this when we send out our email, so you can save some cash on that. Save for your taxes, pay them quarterly. You should be budgeting 25 to 35% of your profit for taxes. Don't let that bite you in the butt, because it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. Have at least 4 months of expenses in savings. That's hard to do. If you haven't done that, it's because you've frankly been living off of the money you've been making instead of running like a business. At least 4 months of expenses in savings. Remember, I told you it costs us $150,000 a month roughly to run Hatch Realty. That means I have to have $600,000 in savings that I can get at if there's trouble. I'm not there. And I have a couple months saved because I'm not foolish, but I don't have all of it. And I need to take more of my own advice. And please do it right, because I didn't do it right when I started. And finally, number 7, avoid shiny objects. My gosh, that's going to get you in so much trouble if you just try to buy that new thing that's going to get you to the top. So with that, I'm going to go to these questions here. Great question from, I think it's, is that from Chris? Let's see. Anyways, what about hiring an ISA sooner if a lot of our converted leads aside from Sphere are coming from you and also cold calling Mojo leads? Yeah, I think you can hire an ISA sooner if you're going to lead them well. An ISA can jump on and help you right away. I just want you to know that if you're having to spend on leads rather than milk all of your production from PCSOI, you may be flirting with danger, because you may not be making near as much money as you think. So do the exercise I said about paying yourself. Go back to your 2019 P&Ls. Take a look at your numbers and start paying yourself in those buckets. Pay yourself a salary, and then take out commission for those things that you produced, and see what your actual owner profit is at the end. And if you're at least 20%, you have my permission to start growing. But make sure that you're profiting and profiting well. Paul asked a question about Profit First. I'm going to jump to the old internet because I'm forgetting it's Mike Michalowicz. Mike Michalowicz is, if you go to profitfirstbook.com, I just did the Audible version of it. I do not recommend the Audible version of it because it is a lot of detail that you need to write out and you need to follow along with. So buy the actual version of it. Again, profitfirstbook.com is what you'd want to go to. Heather, again, on our team says Roleplay is so valuable. Heather is role-playing regularly. Heather has been in real estate now for 12 months. Last year, she jumped in April, and by the end of the year had sold 8 houses. It was right about where we predicted. She had sold about 8 houses for the year because we knew there's always that ramp up period of 3 to 6 months. This year, Heather is en fuego. In the month of April, the first 28 days now, Heather has sold 8 houses in one of our expansion markets. You want to talk about hiring right, training right, role-playing regularly? That is proof in the pudding right there that we aren't just hiring somebody and throwing them to the wolves irresponsibly. Instead, we're training, and she's coming with the right attitude, and she's so coachable, and that's why she's crushing it. So know that that is potential for you when you rock it. Chris asked the question, how many agents do we have per ISA? Our world is different. I want to give you an interesting answer. I'm going to say that as you build, there's not a right model to build because everybody's market is different. Everybody's team structure is different. But the number I want you to write down is the number of 20 to 1. 20 to 1 if you're in an average sales price of between $150,000 and $300,000 for your market. That rule of 20 to 1 applies like this, is if you have 20 transactions, that should be reflective of 1 full-time team member. It doesn't matter if they're in production or an ISA or an admin, the rule of 20 to 1. So if you do 100 transactions in your organization, 5 people is the right balance. We as a group are going to do about 700 to 750 transactions this year, and we're doing that with 38 people. If we hit 760 transactions, that tells me that that rule of 20 to 1 is exactly where we want it to be. So how many agents do we have per ISA? Well, I have the top ISAs in the country, and I also have the top agents in the country. So I can't compare that because they also get stupid leverage. They all have partners for the most part that they're working with. They all have TCs, they all have ISAs, and they get so much support around them, Christopher, that they're really going to it's reflective of this. And I'll say this, is that an ISA can handle between 250 and 400 new leads a month. It depends on the lead source, but 250 to 400 leads per month per ISA. Paul asked the questions, what were the other books that I mentioned? I mentioned The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I mentioned Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And I mentioned Play for the Person Next to You by Eric Hatch. You can go to our, again, if you go to the Hatch Coaching site and go to our marketplace, we're giving you a 15% discount code so you can pick up that book along with some other things. Okay, next up, how much buyer side income is needed to support an ISA at $2,000 per month plus commission? And how much do you pay an ISA? Where does the money come from? Seller side, buyer range, 500 to 800. You want to build what we have. Chris, there's lots of layers to that question, man. We're going to get on a call here. Thanks, you gave me your email, so I'll send you a link when this is done. Your average price point is higher. Here would be my challenge, and this is a really important thing for all of you, and thanks for hanging around for question and answer. Ripping off and duplicating will not get you success. That's really difficult because here we are on a 49-minute webinar, and I'm giving you these things that you want to go and just rip off and duplicate. If you don't approach it with the same mindset and mentality of how to grow, ripping off and duplicating is not going to happen. You could, in the NFL, you could steal the New England Patriots playbook, but it doesn't mean you can coach like Belichick, and it doesn't mean you can throw like Brady. And you can rip off our playbook all you want, and I'll give it all away for free because that's not where the value is. The value is in the mindset of being coachable, moldable, and being willing to do the things that seem unorthodox and understanding that you are the catalyst. You are the thing that matters the most. I'm teaching you on this webinar how to run as a business. This has nothing to do with your business. This has everything to do with you and your mindset. And if you can take the mindset of God, family, and self at the first, it's the only way you're going to be effective with your team. If you don't have this mastered, everything I just shared with you doesn't matter at all. It just doesn't. And if you don't have this figured out for your team, your clients won't matter. So you can steal the playbook all you want, and I'm happy to share it with you, but real coaching is being teachable and moldable so that you can have the right mindset of things. I hope that registers with you. I hope that makes sense because I'm going to keep giving out our playbook as best we can, but you need to know and understand that it's the mindset of things that will make a huge difference. With that, I'm going to say 30 seconds more. If there's any other questions, I want to answer them. Otherwise, if you want to connect with me in any sort of way, let me know. We're going to send this webinar out so you'll have this as a resource. And then we at Hatch Coaching, man, we're pivoting left and right here. Who knows what the future is holding? We love gathering in person and doing summits and masterminds. We may just have to do it here in the virtual world for who knows how much longer, but we're committed to bringing a whole lot of stuff. Lisa, why don't you email me? I'm Eric, E-R-I-K, at hatchrealty.com. Happy to get connected with any of you, talk about coaching or how we can help your world in the best sort of way. McLean, thanks for the question. If you have agents that hate role play, what's the best way to get them involved? Fire them. No, there was Chris's answer, fire them. I disagree completely that they should be fired. I think that you have a culture that needs to be impacted. One of my favorite strategies is, it's a House of Cards strategy. If you ever watch House of Cards on Netflix, it's all about politics and it's all about the House of Representatives. And the decisions that were made were always made before they actually got into the room. What Frank, the main character, would do is he would find the influencers and he would influence them before he ever brought it to the house. And so let's say you have one or two people, and if you meet with them and if you can get them to self-discover that they would find value in role play, then have it be their idea. Have it be something that they are the storytellers for. Because if you're trying to run this infrastructure where you're at the top, everybody's at the bottom, and you're saying, you need to do this, you need to do this. Well, guess what? The only thing that they feel from the top is bullcrap coming down. And instead, if your other people that are great leaders can help build up ideas and it comes from them, it's going to be embraced rather than turned off on and repulsed. So, Heather says also role play has to be relevant. Boy, you are spot on with that, Heather. Having role play being something that is applicable, real life situations, and that you have both the new kid on the block and the seasoned agent in the same room, learning from one another, is how it really matters. If role play is just assigned, it's going to be pushed back on, and you need to find a way that people want to get better. We've done this A-player exercise over the last few months, which has been super powerful. That's a total another tangent, and it may be another webinar that we're going to come out with. But this A-player exercise is getting people to recognize and identify what actually makes an A-player, not by production, but by attitude. And when you can identify what it means, this comes from a book called The Road Less Stupid. The Road Less Stupid is another really great book. And it talks about identifying what A players are and the characteristics that they bring. And if your people can be A players in your world, oh man, they're going to want to be coached. They're going to want to do role playing. They're going to want to get better every day because they're coming in not as the ones with all the answers. They're coming in with more questions to say, I want to get better. And Anita says, I've been great. Thank you very much. You're not in place or position to hire yet. Yeah. Lots of things to do, Anita. Glad I could bring some value to you. And no matter where you're at on the scale of being brand new or not having anybody on your team, or I see my buddy Manny is on here who has dozens of people on his team, and everywhere in between, I hope that you found some things that you could be or should be doing to rise the tide in your world. So with that, watch for the email where we're going to get you lots of information, get you a discount code on those things. There's some great books I recommended. And if you have things that you want to share with me in terms of feedback or topics that you want on future webinars, I want to hear from you. So again, it's Eric, E-R-I-K, at hatchrealty.com. I'll put it here in the chat bar. And with that, God bless you. Have a beautiful day. I look forward to hearing from some of you, and be well.